It's your Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, March 17th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is glad we have an answer of sorts on Emil Andre.
Yeah, this was getting a little lengthy, but I'm happy with it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that and some Phantoms related things in the strategy around call ups, preview the weekend matchups against Buffalo and Carolina, and more, all on today's show.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Happy Friday. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who is on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Flyers. That is where we post about our latest episodes, Flyers news, all that good stuff. You can email the show at lockdownflyers@gmail. We do a mailbag almost every week. So get your questions in and we will do our best to answer them. Locked On Flyers is free and available anywhere you listen to podcasts. So subscribe. You'll get all of our episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Plus, we're over on YouTube. So get subscribed over there as well. So, Russ, it was a nail biter relative to our recording time for this show, hearing about Emil Andre, and we've been talking all week about the future of the Flyers and what we would
Mhm.
do from a player development standpoint and what we would
Mhm.
do in the front office. And really, the number one thing on our list all week has been get Emil Andre signed. So we have step one here,
Mhm.
doing an amateur tryout for the remainder of the Phantoms season.
Yeah, and usually what follows is the ELC. Maybe they already have sort of like a understanding in place that that's what's going to happen because that's the normal procedure. There was a tweet earlier in the week that said something a little different, and I was kind of wondering about it. So, um, good first step. Uh, my feeling is though, let him play a game or two, and then make sure if you haven't had that agreement in place to make sure you do because you know he's like anybody else. He could decide not to also and just go back over in Sweden and live out his next 2 years, and the Flyers' rights will be over. So if they want to see him, fine. But I just want to see him get signed because I know what kind of talent he is.
Yeah, he is a huge talent. And as we saw in World Juniors, he really stands out there defensively, and can, pick up some points here and there too. And I think that if you're looking to the future of the Flyers defensive core, especially when there are question marks and potential trade possibilities for, guys like Provorov and Sanheim, you
Hmm.
need other players who are coming up in the ranks who are going to be a key part of the blue line for the Flyers. And Emil Andre could absolutely be one of those guys.
Yeah, I mean he's terrific on the power play, and the Flyers really don't have a lot of power play uh, guys in the system because really now um, Zamula we're not going to put in that category. And York, while he is, I'm not there yet to say he's a top power play guy. I'm not there yet. He needs to have a little more accurate of a shot. So Adder definitely a power play guy, but you need like 3 or 4 of those guys.
Right.
And Andre is one of them, but he can play good defense. And I
Yep.
get that he's 5'9", but he is very feisty. He will use his body. He's fast. He knows how to position. He's really, really good. And you know, I don't know what the hesitation would be in not just signing him right away, but okay, they'll get to see him play. And like I said, I hope that before the end of the season they sign him, but most likely he'll get signed at the end of the season.
Yeah, that seems to be where we're headed. And, you talk about his ability to get some points on the board, and you look at a league like the SHL, which is
Hmm.
not a big scoring league, right? And so for a small defenseman to rack up 26 points in 51 games in a league like that really shows a lot about his skill.
Yeah, no question. I mean, he'll adjust to the smaller ice here. He played that way in the World Juniors, looked really good. I think because of his physical nature, that'll be secondary for him. I don't think it'll take long. At the beginning, it does affect guys' angles and how they see the puck coming at them and everything. Guys playing off the wall because there's less room. Those are things that show up for a little while, but he'll get used to that. Yinning will probably help him with that, and that's
Yep.
something, that's a big deal. And again, yeah, you've got a guy
Love
here.
the idea of those two guys together.
Yeah,
Love
I
it.
mean, he's a potential second pairing defenseman. And so, let's see how it all works out. But this is good because, this is adding to their talent base, and that's what you need to do.
More Swedes. I want all the Swedes all the
Yep.
time.
Yep.
All right. Talking about Tyson Forster and what's going on with him, John Tortorella said that they're going to use one of their recalls on Tyson Forster if Wade Allison is able to play tonight. And they weren't 100% sure as
It
of
looks like he's
practice
in. Yeah.
yesterday, but yeah, so regardless, it seems like they're going to use one of those recalls for Tyson Forster. And Tortorella spoke specifically at practice yesterday about that, and that he really wants to see Tyson Forster play in some more Flyers games, and that while they do think that the Phantoms playoff run is important to them, I think that they really showed what the priorities are. And I'm not necessarily saying that it's wrong to keep him up with the Flyers, because there's some things you can learn from that and absolutely some benefits to it. But they really were just looking at the Phantoms' calendar of games and when they were, as opposed to the opponents and how that could affect their playoff run, because none of this does Tyson Forster any good if the Phantoms drop out of the playoff race, which is
Correct.
possible. It's not likely, but it's possible. They haven't sealed it up by any stretch of the
No.
imagination. We've been talking about that for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I think it's a real risk, and I don't think that they're acknowledging the risk of what they're doing to the Phantoms at an appropriate level.
No, the reality here is, and Tortorella's talked enough about it, the team is desperate for scoring. So they're going to keep Forster. They're going to have Forster come up. That's what it is. He likes his shot. They're desperate for scoring. He got a few shots on net on the power play. He's going to go with that. And, not worried about the Phantoms. And that's the reality. And that's something that I did tell you about a couple shows ago. And John's pretty consistent. Like I expected this to happen. So I'm not surprised. I'm not saying it's wrong either, but I'm just saying
Mhm.
I would, if it was me choosing, I would choose him to stay down with the Phantoms simply because ensuring that playoff run is more important than these couple of more games that he might get at the NHL level at this point.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Like I said, pros and cons to both,
Hmm.
absolutely. And
Hmm.
there is value to keeping him with the Flyers. I just think that if you really want to have him be part of a playoff run, then it can't just be those playoff games or the last few games of the season. It has
Right.
to be this continuing play with the team to solidify that playoff position, because
Hmm.
learning to play well consistently on a team is part of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, you were saying offline, this is messing with the line combos down in
Mhm.
Lehigh. If they lose a few more in a row, who knows what happens with their season? It could only take that. I mean, you never know. Every team is seemingly playing decent, so it's not like the Phantoms can run away with this. They need wins, and they didn't win their last game. So even though I'm kind of jumping ahead for next week, but sorry, folks, that's we're staying
No,
up to.
that's fine. That's part of the
I
conversation.
know we're staying up to date here. So really, you've taken away their best or second best player down there, one of their best power play guys, the best shot on the team. Like, it means something. So we'll see. I know it's easy to say, hey, the Phantoms should band together and do that and win anyhow. Fine. I get it, but easier said than done.
Yeah, absolutely. And, related to Wade Allison, who Tyson Forster had been playing in place of, it's definitely telling when John Tortorella, the first thing out of his mouth is, oh, he gets hurt all the time, or
Yeah,
he's always hurt, which is something that is factually correct. It's
it is.
just, it's, man, it must be tough for him to think that, like, the coach, that's the first thing that pops into his head. And alluded to the fact that there are going to be questions about Wade Allison's position on the team moving forward because of that injury history.
Right. There is going to be a point, and I said for me, it might have been this year to not extend his contract simply because he's not going to play enough games. This year, he's still not going to play enough games, even if he plays every game for the rest of the year. He still can't play a full season. So at some point, because he's not a point a game player, not even close to it, while he's a decent player, it's going to get to a point where I'm going to say, listen, we got other players here pushing to get NHL jobs, and I could use that money elsewhere. Maybe I'm using that money for a backup goalie, and sorry, Wade, we gave it everything we had, and he'll get another job, no question, but he might get like a two-way contract again somewhere else. And that's what you have to decide now. And
Yeah,
that's what I think John's been talking about probably behind closed doors, and that's probably why he said that.
right. And it's a real interesting question and something that Danny Briere and the rest of the staff are going to have to tackle. Another thing they're going to have to tackle is whether or not to put Sean Couturier in games. He skated in a full practice as opposed to just a morning skate.
I'm still against that.
Yep, me too. But we'll see how that plays out and continue to follow that story. In the meantime, Flyers have 2 games coming up this weekend, and we will talk about them next.
The NBA season's in its home stretch, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000, that's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers and threes drained. I hear LeBron's coming back. Maybe bet on the Lakers for a little while. They're going to be desperate to make the playoffs. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more.
So these weekend matchups the Flyers have are going to be interesting for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think the game against the Sabres is I think going to be a rough one. The Sabres just lost to the Caps, and now they're really kind of out of the playoff hunt.
Yes.
They're 3-5-2 in
They
their
should have
last
gotten a
10.
goalie. We talked about it. Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand, but they didn't want to, so.
Yeah, so they didn't get a goalie, and that did not work out well for them. Also, they recently lost Matthias Samuelsson to injury, but they got Alex Tuch back. So
Yeah.
I don't know. You win some, you lose some.
Yeah,
But
but they need Samuelsson more. I'll tell you, Tuch is a really
yeah.
good player, but Samuelsson makes Rasmus Dahlin better because he
Mhm.
allows him to stray more and play more offensive. So I
Yeah.
think it's nice to get Tuch back, but losing Samuelsson's worse, I think.
Right. And I do think, though, with Tuch back, you get a more powerful top line for the
Sure,
Sabres with
you do.
Tage Thompson and Jeff Skinner, who's had actually a pretty good season. And, I would not have expected him to be top 3 on the Sabres in scoring, but he is.
No, I would be. I kind of think that's all right. I'm not shocked at that.
The upshot, though, is that Tage Thompson has not scored in 6 games. And while for us as Flyers fans, 6 games doesn't seem like that big of a scoreless
No,
streak.
compared to like Joel Farabee, sure.
Right. But I think for him, it's probably a big deal.
Yeah, and he did have a 5-point game this year. Like,
Mhm.
they better take Tage Thompson seriously and try, because again, that's a matchup problem, a matchup nightmare. And even Cousins is too, because of his size. Also has a tremendous shot. So this is a team that has a lot of big players. They have speed. Casey Middlestad's playing best hockey of his career right now, and he's got some
Mhm.
wheels. Like, this is another team where you can't go 11-7, and you got to be ready for their speed. And they weren't ready for Vegas' speed, the Flyers. So I don't know if they'll be ready for this.
Yeah, and especially, I think the thing we've been talking about as well is staying out of the penalty box because their penalty kill has not been as good as of late, and B, it's like really cost them, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that, when you have a top power play unit with Tuch, Cousins, Skinner, Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin, like
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. So I would try and stay out of the box
Yeah.
as much as possible in
And
this
by the way,
one.
when I do talk about speed, I wanted to say it's really in their lateral movement, um,
Hmm.
especially when they get back on transition and all of a sudden they have to go quickly side to side. They have trouble getting set. Usually the other team is a step ahead, and that causes a lot of problems. That's why it looked like Vegas was on the power play multiple times in that game when they weren't, just because they were able to hold possession like that. I worry about the same thing with the Sabres. Now, the Sabres
Yeah.
goaltending is not as good, though.
Right. And this is where I'm hoping the Flyers offense can get going, that some of those
Right.
shots might actually go in, where they're not facing like a Stanley Cup winning goaltender or a Vezina winning goaltender
No, I mean, Craig Anderson's still
or
pretty good, but he really only plays like once a week. He's 41, like he's getting up there. So I don't know which goalie is going to play this one, but if it's Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, they're going to have a shot at like 3 or 4 goals. Like
yeah.
he's been giving up at least 3 for a lot of games.
Yeah, he has. Turning to Carolina, we saw them pretty recently, but the big difference since that game is that Svechnikov has a torn ACL and is out for the remainder of the season. So
Yeah,
that is a huge blow for them going into a potential playoff run, where I really think if anybody was going to challenge Boston, it might have been Carolina. And
yeah.
now I still think that's the case. They're a good team, don't get me wrong. I just think you might put a little asterisk next to that opinion.
You might. I'm sort of like going that way too. Uh, Although did beat Winnipeg the other day.
Yeah.
So you never know, but they definitely are worse off. And as far as this game goes, Flyers are happy not to face Svechnikov because he definitely scored a goal and may have had a couple points last game and always seems to do well. So this will be an interesting one. If Kochetkov is in there, he's not an easy goalie. I actually like him better than Freddie Anderson, but we'll see how that goes. Jesper Fast always seems to do well against the Flyers.
Yes, he does.
He's always a tricky guy. Jordan Stahl, he's still a problem because he's so good defensively. Gostisbehere,
Yep.
he's
So
gonna be looking to gain an edge. And honestly, Brady Shea has always played the Flyers very physical. Like that's something where
yeah, when he
that's
was on
not
the
a
Rangers,
factor.
he did as well.
Yes.
He was definitely that guy
Yep.
on the
And that's what I
Rangers,
was getting at. Yeah.
and has continued to do so for Carolina. I think that was actually a really good move for Carolina to get
It
Brady
was because
Shea.
I knew that Brindamore was looking for more physicality than offense, but he is still getting offense out of Shea too. So um, it has worked out for him. I know the Rangers sort of soured on him. I mean, he's got 29 points. I mean, that's not bad. 13 goals is
Yeah.
a lot.
In the meantime, the Canes are holding on to a 2-point lead over the Devils for the division lead right now, with a game in hand. But they will be playing Toronto tonight. So both teams will be on the back half of a back to back, so kind of leveling that part of the playing field. But there is, the hope in there that playing the Leafs and then their next series of games are home and home with the Rangers. Maybe they could just let one slip through against the Flyers in between there.
Yeah, I mean, I know the Bedard watchers are not going to love that statement, but uh,
It's true.
they're still going to try and win games. The thing here though is the Flyers have not done well in the second period. Tortorella talked about that last game. So they need to have
Mhm.
a really strong first period. Like they need to get 1 or 2 goals in the first period. They need to get out to the lead and kind of like, especially if Buffalo is, not doesn't have their legs right away. They've got to take advantage of that because they're going to be the more rested team. So we're going to see uh, how this is. And, I'm going to grade the coaching staff on this one for preparation and getting the guys ready for this one.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to say what's gonna happen this weekend, I think obviously they have a much better shot at winning against the Sabres than they
Yes.
do against the Canes. And I would like the Flyers to win one in this next little stretch, even if you are a tank person, just because you need to get some wins sprinkled in there for confidence boosting and to be nice to your goaltenders. Like they need
Yes.
to play well in front of their goaltenders. And Torts mentioned something about Carter Hart yesterday as well, and just how impressed he's been with this season. All things considered.
It's as much praise as he'll ever give a goalie. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's pretty high praise from Torts,
Yes.
the way he talks about Carter Hart. And so I would like to see them get one of these 2 games this weekend as a
I mean,
win.
I don't think it's outrageous to ask, and I honestly think, the Sabres is their best opportunity, but I don't think it's too much to ask. I mean, but you know what? It could be, Rachel. It could be like asking for that one extra thing on Hanukkah, and your parents are like, you're over budget. You're going to have to relook at that.
Well, I pretty much just got socks, so I think we're in good shape.
You got more than socks. I executive challenge that. There's no way you only got socks.
I have a birthday that's pretty close to Hanukkah, so I
Oh, okay.
tended
So
to
you
get
cleaned up on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just got regular stuff for Hanukkah.
Okay.
But anyway, back to the hockey. I think that that's really what I want. I want to see some quality play. I want to see a full game effort, and I want to see them get 1 out of 2 games this weekend. And I honestly don't care which one it is.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter to me which one it is. Although I am writing, I'm covering the one against the Hurricanes. It would be better if it was that one. It's much easier for me to do a gamer if they win than if they lose. I'll admit that.
Sure.
So, but doesn't matter.
All right, we are going to wrap up the week with a little rundown and first evaluation of the Danny Briere era for the Flyers, kind of look at the rest of the season, and get into a couple of NHL things coming up next. So, Russ, we have 1 week of the Danny Briere era. How we doing?
It's touch and go. I mean, there's some bad optics that we talked about a couple shows ago with his son. It's certainly not his issue, but again, same family. When you're the dad, it's going to reflect on you. So there's that. I would have preferred they sign Andre right away. They didn't. They're going to look at him. Okay. So the same way they're going to wait and see on Andre, I'm going to wait and see on Briere. I think it's been like just a wait and see. I haven't seen anything that I could put my finger on that would say, that's really good, or that's, what I expected. Not quite there yet.
Yeah, I think so too. And obviously, we're not judging Danny Briere on
No.
1 week of
No.
an administration in this interim term. But I do think, getting off to a good start is very important. And so the Andre situation, it would be a big indicator of that in something that's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
And then, obviously he had some personal issues this week come up, which probably didn't help. Having the GM meetings where he couldn't really 100% focus on and be in Philadelphia and get in front of the microphone right away and all of that. It's a little janky, to be honest, but I think that they could have done better overall with all of that. But I will look to the next couple of weeks to see what happens with ELCs and with Andre and what they decide to do ultimately with the remaining call-ups. We'll be down to a couple of them left with Tyson Forster's burning of 1, and 13 games left after this weekend. And they have a lot to accomplish and a lot to do, like we talked about on the Wednesday show, in terms of, player evaluation and how to approach the off season. And so the next couple of weeks are going to be extremely critical.
Yeah, at this point, with 13 games left, let me see some continuity from the team. Let me see maybe some looks that I haven't seen before where I could say, all right, maybe Briere got with the analytics department. They said, why don't you try these guys together? It's really working. Let me see if I at least see anything that points to that. If I just see, more of the same the way it's been this year, I'm going to be underwhelmed. That's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah. And I think, if they make some changes, that will show that he's working well with John Tortorella so
Correct.
far as
Yeah.
well. That'll be a huge indicator of that. So something to keep an eye on there. I know a lot of us have been having fun with the Tankathon simulator with the Flyers moving up to the number 5 slot, however temporary that may be.
Mhm.
But I'm obviously not weighing that too much because that will be whatever it is, and you deal with the pick that happens. But I'm thinking that they'll end up in the 7 slot, at least in the ranking.
No, I think 7 is probably where they're going to end up. And my big question for that will be if Matvey Michkov is available at 7, will they take him? Will they say, okay, we know that you have like another 3 years of contract in the KHL. Will they be willing to wait? Will they go for the high ceiling guy who's got a ton of ability and speed and everything else? Or are they going to look for a player to get to the NHL faster again? That will be very telling for me to see how this administration is going to act now.
Yep, I think so. And we'll obviously be covering that in the lead up to the draft, depending on how that lottery goes on May 8th. One thing we did not get a chance to talk about this week that we wanted to talk about because it was fun was that Big City Greens Classic, the
Yeah.
animated special that they did for the Caps Rangers game that was happening at the same time as the Flyers game. So got to go back and after kind of second screening it for the first period, but then I focused more on the Flyers game. Went back and watched some more of it on Disney Plus, and I have to say that is one of the most fun things the NHL has done in recent
Okay.
memory.
I mean, just for what I saw, I could see where it would be fun for smaller kids. If I had somebody over the age of 5, I'd still have them watching the regular hockey game. That's just me, but I'm not a dad, so don't judge me. That's just what I would say I would do. Uh, I did think it looked like Blades of Steel a little bit if anybody's played it when the guys celebrated because they all kind of crashed into each other. I don't think they expected that to happen. Uh, but I wish they had more individuality as far as the looks of the players, even if it's just something little like, Zibanejad have longer hair, get the laces right on somebody if it's Ovi, even though Ovi didn't play, those kinds of things. They're little things that video game companies have been doing for many, many years, but I just feel like they were just sort of rolling this out and didn't put that extra into it, Rachel. And that's I'm looking for that extra because again, the last thing
I
you
thought it
want.
was very extra, but
No, no, no. But here's what I'm saying from a marketing perspective, and you always have to look at the marketing. We always complain that the NHL players don't get marketed well enough. And if they all look alike in a video game, nobody can stand out.
yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I just like the experience I thought was just so wonderful with
Yeah, yeah,
everything
yeah. I
else
heard
and
Kevin
having
Weeks was a star, and I'm not
oh,
shocked at that.
yeah, Kevin Weeks was a star. And if you saw some of the behind the scenes stuff, like they were in mocap suits the entire
Yeah.
time,
And those things
which
are not
is
comfortable.
no.
I have been to Electronic Arts Studio. I've watched people in those. They're big, clunky suits.
Yeah.
They don't breathe very well. They have all kinds of I forget what they call them. It's like those lighting fixtures on like those strobe lighty
Mhm.
things. All those sensors, they're sensors. They have all those on them. So it is not the easiest thing to have on for long term.
No, and they did such a great job, improvising along the way, and I loved that the ref was a chicken, and I think there was enough
No
there to
comment on that. I'm not even going to
appeal.
comment on that.
I thought there was a lot to appeal for kids watching it, and as somebody who has never seen that cartoon, I knew nothing about the comics, I was enthralled, and I
What
thought
would
it was
what would you have
fun.
said though if that were the game where Jordan Binnington's challenging the bench and then there's a bench clearing brawl and Marc-Andre Fleury was going after him and it was all animated? I kind of wonder if your perspective would have changed if they would have been that
Right,
game.
but that is also a thing where if you're trying to just introduce hockey to a kid, I think it worked really well,
Hmm.
right? That even in a situation like that, I think it would have taken some of the vitriol out of it and softened it for the kids a little bit to see a fight like that
Let me ask you
happen.
this, and this is a
But
legit question. Had there been like a double minor, high stick where there's blood, we wouldn't have seen animated blood, right? There's no way.
no,
No.
no. And I think that's a good thing.
Okay.
So, I really do, and then you translate that especially because the game is running at the same time, you could to screen it to show what it looked like for real. I think there were so many opportunities there, so I hope we get to see more creativity like that from the NHL in the future.
Okay. I want to see what the ratings are before I say it's a full success. That's to me the barometer.
Well, I loved it, and that's all that matters really,
Yeah, there
Russ.
you go. On this show, at least.
Yeah. Alright. Wrapping up with our Flyers fun thing, David Boreanaz of television fame, going back to Buffy and Angel and Bones and I think SEAL
SEAL
team.
team something.
Yeah, that he's on right now. He's one of the longest running performers on TV. He's been on TV continuously for like 30 years or something. But big Flyers fan, obviously grew up mostly in the area, son of Dave Roberts. And
A weatherman, if people don't know.
yes, who recently retired and had dinner in town with Kimmo Timonen and Peter Forsberg, who looks amazing, by the way, and the owner
Forsberg
of
or
Forsberg,
yeah. Okay, good for him.
and the owner that is part owner of the Devils and Sixers in town, and
Oh, Josh Harris.
yeah. So I thought that was pretty neat. He was back in town and had a caption saying that the fans deserve better. They do.
He's a great guy.
And
I've interviewed him.
he is,
I've talked to him in the locker room. He is a very knowledgeable guy, down to earth. He's willing to talk to
yep,
everybody. Cool guy.
yep. I have talked to him a few times as
I
well
want to add one more fun
in
thing.
fandom.
Yeah, one more fun thing on the TNT broadcast. Apparently, Henrik Lundqvist went into the studio and he, like, I guess he wore sneakers or something, brought his expensive shoes and his suits and everything. And he asked around if there was a shoehorn. So he asked the runner to go get a shoehorn, and the runner had no idea what a shoehorn was. And they
Not
exposed
shocking.
that on the panel. And I just laughed because I haven't used a shoehorn in years. I just kind of use my finger or thumb now if it's a pair of shoes, because I don't wear shoes even that often. But I just think it's funny, if anybody's going to want a shoehorn, yes, it would be Henrik Lundqvist.
I believe that. He's always styling.
Yeah.
All right, that will do it for today's show and for the week. We'll be back again on Monday with a recap of the games against the Sabres and Canes. We'll have our nemesis of the week, as we do each and every Monday. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you, so send in your mailbag questions via Twitter at LockedOnFlyers, or you can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. Now make your second listen Game to Game NHL. It's every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. It's on your Locked On NHL feed wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend, everyone.